This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service. Manx Radio! Saints, sinners, strawberries, a green pilgrimage and focusing on what really matters. It's all on this morning's programme. But first, some music. Let all the world in every corner sing, My God and King. The Westminster Abbey Choir in fine voice there, and let all the world in every corner sing, My God and King. The parish of St George and All Saints is a lively Anglican community based around All Saints Church Hall in Alexander Drive and St George's Church right in the heart of Douglas. The church is a familiar home to many civic services. Around 4,000 people are involved in those every year. But today we're outside the church to discover something new in the churchyard that surrounds St George's. A series of storyboards have just been installed, full of fascinating information, as the Vicar of St George's, the Archdeacon, the Venerable Andy Brown, now explains.
Well, over the past 4 or 5 years at St George's and All Saints, we've been working on a project to develop some storyboards because in the previous 4 years we've been doing more and more to reclaim areas of the churchyard from wilderness, and we've discovered some fascinating tombstones and memorials to some fascinating people. And about 4 or 5 years ago I did a tour of the churchyard, and we were trying to think what to call it, and we came up with Saints, Sinners and Strawberry Teas. I suppose the most famous resident of the St George's Churchyard, I think in a Manx context, the most famous is probably Nellie Brannan. In a UK or British Isles context, the most famous by far is Sir William Hillary. Nellie nursed victims of the cholera outbreak in the mid-early 19th century, and Sir William Hillary founded what became the Royal National Lifeboat Institution, and subsequently built the Tower of Refuge, which we can see from your studio window this morning, Judith. It's a fascinating churchyard because, it's the only church burial ground in Douglas, whereas, every other parish on the island has a burial ground. But we began as a chapel of ease for Braddon. And so everybody in the old fishing village of Douglas had burial rites in Braddon. And then as the town became more prosperous and it was built around the bay, of course, people at the other end had burial rites in Oncombe. And so St George's became the field of the stranger. The church, of course, was built in 1761, and the first burial was 1794. So a lot of the people buried there are part of the growing British Empire. There's lots of generals and military ranks of army and navy. And also, tragically, as well as the cholera pit, we have the SS Minerva pit, where the Minerva was shipwrecked and the entire crew, captain and one passenger, were lost, and they're buried in the Minerva pit right next to the cholera pit. And there are dozens and dozens and dozens of graves, now largely unmarked, of those whose bodies tragically washed up on the shore of Douglas Bay and were buried in the new chapel churchyard, which is now St George's Churchyard. And of course it was that loss of life to the Conister Rock, particularly, but also to the squalls and uncertain currents of Douglas Bay, which inspired Sir William Hillary to establish the RNLI and the Conister Rock. And Sir William, of course, is our greatest saint/sinner, because he fled England as a bankrupt, leaving behind his debts and his wife. And then he married a local girl, a young girl. So Sir William was a bankrupt, a bigamist, and the belief is, certainly at St George's, that Sir William is in fact not buried in his tomb because he went bankrupt again. And in those days, bankrupts who died bankrupt were strapped to the pier in Douglas and left for the tides and the seabirds.
I think that might be a good point at which to say anybody can take the tour of the churchyard, follow the storyboards and discover all these people at our leisure. And you're having a special launch next weekend, aren't you? Next Saturday.
This is another Saints, Sinners and Strawberry Teas on Saturday the 17th of July, beginning at 2:30. And as we've done with the last however many of these we've done, there'll be a guided tour of the church. There'll be a little launch ceremony of our plaques, which were very kindly part funded by Manx National Heritage, I should mention. And we'll have a brief little ceremony of a few minutes and then do one of the Saints and Sinners tours of the churchyard, which we try to do with a little bit of humour and loud voices. And if the weather is inclement, do come along anyway, because I've photographed everything and we can put it up on the big screens inside St George's Church and still do it with, a bit of humour and a lot of local and a lot of British imperial history shared out in small doses as we go along. And then we'll have strawberry teas, and whilst people are having strawberry teas, there's an opportunity for small parties, several small parties, to climb up the church tower to see the bells, the 12 bells of St George's, and then to be shown how they are rung. That's a fascinating and very popular aspect, and our captain of the tower, Ernie de Lee Runciman, will lead those little tours up into his domain.
Give me the faith which can remove and sink a mountain to a plain. Give me the childlike praying love which longs to build thy love again. Thy love, let it my heart empower, and all my simple soul devour. I would the precious time redeem, and longer live for this alone, to spend and to be spent for them who have not yet thy Saviour known. Fully on these my mission prove, and only breathe thy love. My talents, gifts, and graces, Lord, into thy blessed hands receive, and let me live to preach thy word, and let me to
the St. Michael Singers and Charles Wesley's hymn, Give Me the Faith. And the launch of the storyboards, the Saints, Sinners and Strawberry Teas and the tour of the bell tower are all in St George's Church in Upper Church Street here in Douglas next Saturday the 17th at 2:30. And whilst there's no charge for any part of the afternoon, donations in support of the local charity GRI would be most welcome. Now, if you were out and about in the west of the island last week, you might have spotted banners inviting you to make a green pilgrimage. 5 holy places were showing the eco-expedition that they're on and encouraging us to join them in living greener, more sustainable lives. Kirkmichael Parish Church, Patrick Church, Old St Runius in Moraun and St James's Church in Dalby were all involved, along with the Cathedral in Peel. And their major exhibition, based around the 16 Sustainable Development Goals, is still in place and will be for the coming weeks. It's been made possible by support from Scientists in Congregations, an organisation dedicated to building on existing relationships between churches and scientists to simply bring church and science closer together. The Cathedral has that existing relationship between the Dean of the Cathedral, the Very Rev'd Nigel Godfrey, and scientist Dr Henry Uniacke, who's part of the Cathedral Church family and also the Diocesan Environmental Officer. I called into the Cathedral a couple of days ago to see the exhibition and to chat with them, and with Rosemary Clarke, another member of the Cathedral ministry team who's worked very hard on creating the exhibition and feels strongly about the need for more sustainable living.
It's been great to have the opportunity to encourage people to come into the Cathedral as part of a green pilgrimage, to really appreciate some of the beauty that's around us, but also to be a bit challenged about how we treat the earth and whether we really care for it and love it in the way that you might hope.
There were, in fact, almost a triangle of other churches in the west of the island, St James's Dalby, Old St Runius, Kirkmichael Parish Church and Patrick Church, all offering very different experiences. There was a big focus on this National Week for the churches to be open and lots of things to do and explore. But it's still going on, isn't it?
Yes, we're hoping there's going to be an immediate legacy that people can carry on visiting these churches and appreciating some of the things that we've been highlighting. So, for example, at Old St Runius, a beautiful old church in the middle of the countryside with fantastic views, which is managing its churchyard for biodiversity. And inside the church, there are a couple of really attractive boards which explain about their own eco-journey. And that will continue to be open, even if all of the lovely flowers which garnish their windowsills will have been moved. The focus was on keeping everything local, so no oasis and no bought flowers, so things from the cathedral garden, from the Dean's garden, from individuals' gardens, just making the point of the beauty that is part of the natural creation. In Patrick, it's a trail particularly around their allotments and the community orchard, getting people to look out for things about biodiversity as well. And Dalby, I mean, they always have amazing displays. Their community bunting, where almost everybody in the village produced one flag as the bunting, all on environmental themes, is amazing. And the children, both at Kirkmichael and here in Peel, have contributed to displays, and at least part of that will be ongoing. So, you know, it's great that we've had that community involvement and the children involved, and we would long for that to continue too.
Thank you, Rosemary. Dr Henry Uniacke, do you find that there's still a lot of education to be done, a lot that we can learn?
There's a huge amount of education. So my angle was to bring science into this. As Greta Thunberg says, look at the science, listen to the scientists. Just to start a process of dialogue for people to see the awe of it, but also to understand the detail behind the surface. Science does have a great depth to it, but the basic principles are understood by all. So, for example, here we're talking about reusing, or recycling, rather than destroying or single use and so on. So concepts like that are easily understood. But when there are difficult decisions to be made, it does require a certain detailed understanding. So we're not proposing to offer all those answers here, but certainly it helps people in their own decision-making to have some understanding of the basic concepts of the science behind the technologies that they're trying to apply.
You're a spiritual person. Is this how you express your faith in an active way?
Well, it's my particular life journey, so I can't not do it. I would say in terms of faith, I think if Jesus happened to have been born 2,000 years later, he would be saying not just love each other, he would be saying love everything, and that includes the animate and inanimate plants, objects and creatures of this planet.
Dean Nigel, I am always saying that you never look happier than when you're out in the garden. You look completely at home, developing the cathedral gardens, working on the deanery garden where you grow all kinds of vegetables and fruits and all that kind of thing. Does this feed your soul?
It does. The coming together of science and faith is really important. We're very grateful for scientists and congregations, a grant from them to enable us to develop this exhibition. But so often we think of science being on one side of the fence and faith on the other. But actually, we hope this exhibition says clearly that both our journeys are in search of the truth. Both are sisters, brothers in relationship to each other, and they're not in conflict.
So the cathedral is open every day, as it always is. We're standing next to a display that's all to do with beekeeping, but sketch out one or two of the other things that we can see in the cathedral.
We've got, for example, a display on the south aisle, which looks at two cemeteries, one our own, which is pretty sterile in the sense that there's so much more opportunity for wilding and planting trees and so on. And we need to take that opportunity. So it's a rebuke to ourselves, really. We haven't developed the cemetery in the way that perhaps we could. So we're challenging ourselves in that regard. Another area is the opportunity when people travel to do carbon offset, to purchase trees and plants to put as a compensation for journeys they make. There are two communities which are both in the Commonwealth and have a similar land mass. One is in the centre of the Pacific and spread over millions of miles, and the other, the Isle of Man. But they have the same kind of population and same kind of land area. And we've made the comparison of these two nations, where one nation, their carbon footprint's about a sixth of ours, and their population is a bit more than ours, but the whole of the landscape is not more than 2 meters above sea level. So they're in danger of disappearing as a nation.
So this is the Republic of Kiribati, an area that's going to disappear if climate change isn't halted or reversed.
Yeah, this Zen garden indicates the two concepts. Using a Japanese style of garden where the sand is raked to represent fields and the landscape generally, and the rocks symbolize the mountains, or in the case of Kiribati, they are simply pebbles or shells, symbolizing the beach and the fact that the landscape is not 2 meters above sea level. So they may disappear in our generation if we don't do something.
It doesn't give you any easy answers, but a lot to reflect on.
Yeah. Another area is all the recycling that's possible. The cathedral this year has recycled something like 7 tons of various commodities. I think people need to be aware that they can almost recycle everything. So the bins that disappear from this site now of the hall, the cathedral and the deanery is a quarter full bin a week. That's usually about the quantity. So it's tiny compared to what it used to be. The rest is used on site or recycled.
Thank you to the Dean of the Cathedral, the Very Rev'd Nigel Godfrey, Dr Henry Uniacke and Rosemary Clarke. The Cathedral is open daily throughout the year from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And finally, welcome back to Pioneer Minister Rev'd Alex Brown. He's been inspired again by some of the words of Jesus and offers us a poem that explores why Jesus might tell his followers to take nothing with you when they go out to tell the world the most shockingly good news in the whole of history. Alex's words are intended to inspire us today to let go of the religious trappings that can so easily become our focus and just go with God's Spirit given to us through Jesus.
We do well to look behind us, see where this all began, where the good news first exploded and ran and ran and ran. How we got to where we find ourselves, with all that came along, and not just the good and healthy, but things that just feel wrong. Take nothing for the journey, Jesus said to 12 young men. And perhaps take nothing needs to echo in our hearts once again. No bread, he said, no bag with you, no extra coat, no cash. Yet we look around and the faith life is so packed. These words just clash. But in essence, at the core of this, so many things we're not charities or businesses, not buildings or cash pots, not super friendly social clubs, not somewhere calm to go, not places to pretend we're good or stage our new God show, not the bricks and not the mortar, not the steeple, tower or keel, not the drums, guitars or smoke machines. We're something much more real. Look back and hear disciples cry from all through history's stream. They shout, "We have seen the signs of God at work," so share their dream. We have fought injustice and still fight to bring a fairer way. We've stood against hypocrisy despite our fallen, sin-steeped frames. We've joined arms with the ones like us for whom the fringe was home, the poor and homeless, hurt and sick, that they do not walk alone. Take nothing as not a reprimand. Take nothing as not failing. It's a stark reminder of the faith we have, which is beautifully all prevailing. We are the Jesus movement. We are the lost now found. We're the dead come back to life. We are the chained unbound. We are reborn and spirit free. We are the salt and light. We are more than conquerors when we stand together in this fight. We both are transforming and transformed. We love, hope and provide. We're supernatural supernovas, bigger on the inside. We are those with God's authority, both powerful and meek. We are God-reliant, hope-filled, joyous, prayerful, kind and deep. And none of this reality, this movement of God's people, depends on our cash flow, our hall, a wall or a steeple. We go where Jesus takes us, taking nothing for the journey. We go in brilliant confidence. It's Him who makes us holy. The Jesus movement rises every time a storm has come to us. The power that raised Him from the dead still lives in every one of us. And when it's all been said and done, our buildings, cash and bread go rotten. They slip away like sand through fingers, all to be forgotten. So God, take all these little things, we give them all away. Only what's eternal will remain here anyway. Wherever Jesus takes us, nomadic, supple, strong, we hear the Spirit, see His hand, and know where we belong. We go where Jesus takes us, empty-handed but ourselves. And from deep within us overflows His holy, healing wells.
A Original material there from Pioneer Minister for Douglas, Rev'd Alex Brown. Now let's finish with a look at this week's notice board. The weekly Sunday Night at the Prom concerts continue tonight at 8 o'clock with a concert by Manx Voices. That's in the Promenade Church here in Douglas, with free admission, refreshments afterwards and the chance to make a donation as you leave. St Thomas's Church in Finch Road here in Douglas continue their series of summer concerts, an hour of popular music every Wednesday evening from 7:45 with refreshments afterwards. This Wednesday, the Isle of Man Government Choir, conducted by Mandy Griffin, will be providing the music. The Thursday night summer concert series in St Catherine's Church in Port Erin continues this week with music from Meadowside Choral Society. That also starts at 7:45 with free admission, refreshments in the hall afterwards, and the opportunity to give to a retiring collection at the end. The World Day of Prayer service that should have been held in early March will now be held on Friday the 16th of July at 7 o'clock in Trinity Church at Rosemount here in Douglas. But it'll also be possible to join in via Zoom, and if you'd like to do that, contact Sandra Slan on 41 66 92. 41 66 92. The Cathedral have a concert on Saturday evening, that's the 17th, starting at 7:30. Summer Serenade is a cabaret of light music for a summer evening. Admission is free, but donations would be welcome. Looking to next Sunday now, that's the 18th, and Orrisdale Chapel anniversary will be celebrated at 2:30 next Sunday afternoon. Gordon Clegg will be the chairman, Ken Quain is the speaker, and the best of Manx talent will be involved. Donations of food will be welcome, and all proceeds are for the restoration of the chapel. If you'd like to know more, have a word with Pauline on 300 630. 300 630. And finally, an invitation to a Taizé singing workshop in the woods. Meet next Sunday afternoon at 2:30 at Dalby Schoolrooms for a 45-minute walk on road and a track to a singing workshop in the silence of the forest, before returning to the schoolrooms for refreshments, followed by Taizé worship at 6:30 in Dalby Church. Walking boots and insect repellent are recommended. Places are limited for the walk and workshop, so please contact Cheryl Cousins to book a place, and her email is cherylcousins@manx.net. But of course there's no need to book for the Taizé worship next Sunday evening at 6:30. Just come along to Dalby Church and enjoy. And that's all that we have time for today. News for the notice board and requests for your favourite hymns to be included in future programmes can all be sent to me via email, judithlay@manxradio.com, or by post if you prefer. Manx Radio, PO Box 1368, Douglas IM 991SW. I'll be back tonight at 9 with Sundown, easy listening music to round off your weekend, and I do hope you can join me then. But for now, this is Judith saying thank you for listening, and I wish you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week, and a very good morning.
Station, Manx Radio.